It's been 10 years since I last interviewed for a job, but here I am, 44 years old, looking for an opportunity to continue doing what I love. My name is Alex Price, and I'm a mechanical design engineer. I'm new on the block, and the truth is that this company used to be one of my main rivals. I have a feeling they will offer me a job when they see what I have to offer. Soon, I hope everything will work out. My plan, that is, a plan to get rid of my cheating wife. I met Holly in 1993, and even now I can imagine her as she was then. She was beautiful and so confident. I, on the other hand, was shy and introverted. I guess being raised by a dominant, grumpy mother made me this way. She was actively helped by my ugly sisters. Their names were Megan and Anna, and they bullied me throughout my childhood. Megan was the oldest and 13 years older than me. Anna was 10 years older. I guess I was a mistake and not planned, and they all blamed my birth for my parents' separation. My father left home in 1977 when I was 5 years old and never returned. Only recently did I find out the truth. "Come in, Mr. Price. Good to see you." I immediately felt the warmth of Robert Williams, owner of Sutton Hydraulics. He was the complete opposite of the bastard I left behind. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Mr. Williams," I said. I sat down opposite him in his impressive office, and he began to talk. "I'm surprised you're leaving Walker Engineering, Mr. Price." "Please call me Alex, and I can't wait to get out of there," I replied. "They do a great job there, Mr. Price." "Alex, I'm sorry." He was still looking at me with some confusion on his face. "Well, I'm doing a great job there, Mr. Williams." "Please call me Robert," he interrupted. "As I said, I've been working hard for the last 10 years, and it's been my projects that have moved the company forward, without any thanks and, lately, without any respect." He looked at me seriously for several seconds. I said nothing about my situation, and for now, I was willing to keep it a secret. "Without a doubt, I want you here, Alex. I can offer you the package you asked for, which includes a small salary increase of a few £1,000s. But you also suggested on the phone that if you help us win a few more contracts, you would like to earn a commission, right?" he asked, frowning. "Yes." "I hope it's nothing illegal, Alex. I don't want anything to do with it," he said. I raised my hand to assure him of my honest intentions. "I work with our customers a lot. I talk to them every day. I know what they pay for our products, and I know the contracts very well." I began to explain to a cold Robert Williams. "How will anyone know if we come up with a better deal? And with my projects and your team here, we can become leaders in the game. What do you say to that?" I offered confidently. He extended his hand, and I shook it. I looked into his eyes and saw before me an honest and decent man. Another part of the plan was completed. Now back to my cheating wife, Holly. We met at Kingston University in South London. She was in her final year of studying creative writing, and I was finishing my master's degree in mechanical engineering and design. As I already said, I was too shy to approach her, and she never rejected attention from men. She was short with brown hair and large brown eyes, the ones you can get lost in. She had a good figure, but I knew she was out of my league. The guys who courted her were all sociable and popular. To my surprise, one of her friends started talking to me at the party, and Holly came over and joined us. I had little experience with women, and it seemed that my modesty and shyness attracted her attention. I found the courage to ask her out, and we started dating. I'm not ashamed to say that she was the one who took my virginity, but about 6 months into our relationship, I heard a rumor that she was cheating on me with other guys. I had no way to prove it, and I was afraid to confront her with it. Holly was a spoiled child. Her parents spoiled her, and her sister Caroline, and I had to endure her whims for most of our relationship. If she didn't get her way, she would make a scene, and she didn't hesitate to do it in public, which embarrassed me. My friends couldn't stand it and thought I should get rid of it, but I fell in love, and I had never experienced anything like it before. When we left university, we both found jobs and were able to rent a flat outside Southampton in Hampshire. Her family was from there, and I stopped keeping in touch with my family a long time ago. We got married a year later, and the next year, we welcomed Sophie into the world, followed by Ava a couple of years later. Holly loved being a mother, and everything between us seemed great from then on. I was promoted several times, and then started working for Walker Engineering 10 years ago. Increased salaries and bonuses helped us save for a better house. But like most people in the world, 2008 was a bad year. The economic downturn has caused many people to lose their jobs. Contracts became harder to win, so we all had to put in more effort and work longer hours without extra pay. It was during this time, when both girls were in school full-time, that I realized that Holly was having an affair with some guy from our old university. I was so focused on work that by the time it was over, I didn't even know who he was. My best friend Toby thought he was a guy from her band who had moved nearby. I confronted her about this once, and she just laughed in my face and said I was getting stupid. But I saw that she was lying. The fact that I was able to keep my job and a good salary meant that I was in a great position to buy a nice house. Holly always pressured me to buy a house that suited our status, whatever that meant, but I caved in like I always did, and we were able to buy a beautiful 5-bedroom detached house in Southampton. It was a buyer's market at the time, so we got a good price, although the mortgage was a little high. One of the things I did my own way was open a new savings account in my name only. I only put my annual bonus in there, and since I was the sole breadwinner and in charge of all the finances and banking, I don't think Holly would even know about it, even if I dangled the receipts in her face. In retrospect, it turned out to be one of the best decisions I made. I needed some protection because I wasn't sure if Holly was planning on leaving me if an old lover came back. After that time, everything seemed to return to a semblance of normalcy, and girls always came first for me. I supported them in their studies and tried to spend a lot of time with them on weekends. In fact, I was the one who took them to dance classes, concerts, and the zoo more times than I can remember. Holly always seemed too busy hanging out with her other spoiled and lazy friends. I rarely communicated with other husbands, but we were all, to one degree or another, henpecked. My friends sang "Under My Thumb" by the Rolling Stones to me when I canceled plans in favor of what Holly wanted to do. Even at work, the production guys made comments about my marital status, especially about Holly's control over me. Just a few months ago, everything came to a head. Ava had just left for university, and for the first time in 18 years, Holly and I were alone. Both girls attended our old alma mater, and as I finished unpacking Ava's things for the apartment she would share with her sister, she turned to me and asked why I was even with their mother. I was amazed because she had always been such a quiet girl, like her old father. "Dad, I heard she was having an affair with Henry Walker in your company," Ava said. I remember the tears in her eyes when she said this. This was news to me, but I was not surprised. All these years I could have investigated her infidelities and never did for fear of destroying the family, and my girls would suffer because of this, and would harbor a grudge against me, like my sisters against my father. I let her cheat on me because the alternative was unbearable. I still loved her, but I loved what we created more. This news did several things to me. First, I realized for the first time the level of dislike my daughters had for their mother, which was far greater than I could have imagined. They loved and respected me, but I knew they were disappointed that I didn't take control of the situation. Secondly, it brought up old feelings I had about the women in my life growing up and how that contributed to my weaknesses. Finally, I realized that I was openly ridiculed at work, and most noticeably by Henry Walker, who was the nephew of Jack's owner and the man I was being cheated on with. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't continue to tolerate this, especially now that my youngest daughter knew about the ridicule I was receiving from Holly. I knew I had to push her. My heart was racing as I sat at the kitchen table, waiting for Holly to come home. When she finally appeared, I found that I could not speak. She just looked at me with what I can only describe as apathy and contempt. She didn't say anything to me as she unloaded her shopping into the closets. Finally, I spoke. "Are you cheating on me, Holly?" She turned to me, blushing slightly, but answered without hesitation, "I wouldn't call it cheating, darling." I was shocked and disgusted by her confession, but nevertheless silently awaited her explanation of how sex with another man was not considered cheating. You're a wonderful man, Alex. You're a great provider and my best friend, but there are things you can't give me, and I'm not ashamed to say that I want it all," she said, frankly and openly. "So that means you're cheating on me," I said, devastated by her brazen approach to infidelity. "Only with my body," she said. "Not with my heart or mind, Alex. It belongs to you." My head was spinning, and my stomach was in knots. The confidence of her words left me speechless. "I never deny you sex, Alex, and all I do is explore with a couple of young guys," she admitted. "What?" I screamed. I never raised my voice, and my reaction stunned her. She walked around the table and sat down opposite me. "Don't yell at me, Alex," she said, regaining her composure. "You admit that you cheated on me with 2 guys, and I have to keep quiet," I replied. "I love you, Alex, but everything will be like this. Live with this or I will still leave and be with them," she said, presenting me with both a threat and an ultimatum. I just sat there and looked at her as her face softened. For a minute, I thought she saw the pain on my face. "Everyone does it these days, Alex. My friends have had affairs with younger men, and they say it makes the marriage better," she said. I was shocked. I was already barely coping with the blow, but now Holly was really trying to justify her cheating by telling me that all her friends were cheating too. As for the idea that it would make our marriage better, it was disdainful to say the least. She didn't care about the marriage or me, only about the comfort and security I could provide. I spoke again. "So, I can have another woman. Is that what you say, Holly?" She looked at me for a few seconds and then laughed in my face. I sat in silence as she continued to laugh, trying to contain herself. "Come on, Alex. Let's be serious. You have a hard time talking to women you've known for years. What chance do you have of seducing someone?" She openly mocked me, continuing to giggle, and I felt humiliated and ashamed, but she did not stop. "It will be, Alex, so don't ruin a good thing. I'm still your wife. I still love you, and I still come back to you every night. Don't ruin your life by complaining about it or doing something. Oh, you'll regret it." She left me at the table, thinking about what had just happened in my life, in my world. She was so open in her actions that I realized that she didn't care about me at all. I don't care if her friends cheat, but that didn't give her the right to do the same. Moreover, she even dared to threaten me. I was very angry. That night I slept in the guest room. I couldn't stand being around her, but around midnight, Holly woke me up and asked why I wasn't going to bed. Was she really that delusional? I knew she was a spoiled brat, but really. "Oh, come on, Alex, accept it. That's the way the world works now. You're just acting like an old man," she said. I said nothing. I felt her presence on the stairs, looking into the guest room. "As you wish, Alex. You'll be back in bed soon, I know it. You refuse me nothing, and you know, as do I, that I always get my way," she said confidently. Actually, she was right. What had I ever done in our 22-year relationship that could suggest anything other than my unconditional loyalty and willingness to go along with whatever she said and wanted? It was common knowledge that I was under her thumb and henpecked, and it was now well known among her friends and my work colleagues that I was a cuckold. I didn't sleep a wink, so I decided to go downstairs and watch TV. There was a show about celebrities exploring their family trees, and while most of it went over my head, it got me thinking about my own family. I had no contact with my mother or sisters, but began to remember my father. I remembered so little about him. He should have had a family. He had to have. Why did he leave, and was it like my mother said, that he abandoned us? Before I left for university, I heard from my shura that my father died many years ago, but my sisters denied any knowledge of this. This was about the point when I decided to cut them out of my life. The next day, I got up and left the house before Holly came out of our room. What she told me was still swirling in my head, and I was desperately trying to focus on something more positive to just get through the day. I started thinking about last night's TV show and decided to do a little research on my dad. The girls didn't need my help anymore, and my wife was busy cheating, so maybe getting some answers about who and what my father was could help me and occupy my time. "Good morning, Alex." I turned around to see who was speaking and ran into Henry Walker. The smug grin on his face, like he was about to burst with laughter, just made my blood boil. I just looked at him and didn't say anything. "How is your wife?" he asked, clearly mocking me. I heard a few chuckles from grown men at the coffee machine. I just looked at them as they stood there. I walked past them as they continued to giggle behind me. I felt like the whole world knew what I was doing, and even my boss's secretary, Olivia, seemed to find my situation funny and ripe for ridicule. "Can I help you with anything, Mr. Price? Maybe a couple of eggs?" I looked at her. "What did you just say?" I asked, looking into her eyes. She changed her position and came closer to me. "I said there were no calls," she said, trying to contain her laughter. I walked into my office and sat down at my desk. My day started out in the worst possible way, and I was now the target of ridicule both at home and at work. I tried to focus on my project, but the anger inside me did not subside. I decided to start looking for information about my father. All I knew was that he was born in Cambridgeshire and left us at the age of 38 in 1977. So I started searching family history sites in the area. After just 30 minutes of searching, I discovered that there were 14 people named James Price in Cambridgeshire, born in 1939. I knew he could have died many years before I went to university, so I was able to narrow it down to 3 possible people. I decided I didn't have time to search for each of them, so I posted on genealogy sites in each of the cities I found. As I sat in my office reflecting on the last 24 hours, my boss Jack called me in. He wanted to talk to me in his office. Jack was now a successful and wealthy man, but in his 60s he had been married 3 times. He was a traitor and a bully. He was one of those power-mad types who demanded respect but didn't give it in return. Many times in the past I thought about leaving, but he always convinced me to stay, and the salary was the best in the area. The one thing I knew about him was that he cheated on his 3rd wife with his secretary Olivia behind his back. "So, I heard these rumors about your wife cheating on you, Alex," he said bluntly. "With your nephew?" I answered sharply. "Well, yes, he's a cheat, that boy. It's in the family," he said, laughing while I remained silent. "But here's what I want to talk to you about. I don't want this to affect the business, and the family comes first. After this, Alex. So if you have problems, then you will have to leave the company. Understand?" He spoke to me like an old teacher, disciplining a child. I bit my lip as his eager secretary, Olivia, languished at the door. No doubt she was collecting some information to distribute to her friends at work. As I turned to leave, I wondered why a young woman like Olivia would degrade herself to having to deal with a dirty old man like Jack Walker. As I passed her, I heard giggling again. I lowered my head and walked out. As the door closed behind me, I heard an explosive laugh, which was obviously at my expense. As I returned to my office, I realized that being here was not doing me any good. I paid for my daughter's education, and now I was simply funding my wife's infidelity. I was a pretty simple guy. I liked my gadgets, but I could do without a big house. Most of my living expenses were due to Holly's excesses. Weekly visits to the hairdresser and manicure, her car and phone, plus other unnecessary luxuries. I was usually happy at work. It was my creative outlet, and I was very successful. I was the one who designed many of the parts that were made and sold here, and I was confident that I could find decent work elsewhere. They just thought I was too weak and, well, they were right. I was not the conflict type and never created problems because I was happy. I was good old Alex, the henpecked engineer that everyone could step on. I looked at the screensaver of my family on vacation, scrolled my mouse, and a page opened to my email. I had a message waiting, and it was from a woman named Jennifer Holmes from the Cambridge Genealogical Committee. I was amazed at how quickly they responded, and I clicked and read the message. I was amazed. Jennifer read my message asking for information about her father and contacted a woman who claimed to be his niece and who had searched for information about her family tree on the same site many months earlier. Her name was Rachel Murray, and she was my cousin. I sent my number to Jennifer and asked if Rachel could contact me. I left work feeling a little better. As I walked through the door, I smelled dinner. I left my bag in the hallway and walked into the kitchen, where Holly was busy preparing food. We were able to mutter a greeting to each other, but ate in silence. During dinner, Holly tried to make eye contact with me, but she must have known that I was still angry. Until this evening, I had never gone several hours without giving in and letting her get out of it or have her way. She broke the silence. "Can we talk about last night, Alex?" she asked humbly. "What's there to discuss? You said everything last night. I'll either put up with it or else, right?" She looked at me for a few seconds with a look of regret on her face. This didn't last long as she took a deep breath, cleared her throat, and continued, "You're a wonderful husband, and you've never denied me anything, so please don't deny me that either, Alex." She almost begged, as she always did, to get what she wanted. "If I'm so wonderful, why are you cheating on me? Why are you making a fool of me?" I asked honestly. She hesitated and simply waved me off. She didn't have an answer. She was just being selfish, and I was tired of it. There was nothing more I could do to make her happy. The hours I worked to pay the bills and give her everything she wanted, and all I received in return was disrespect and ridicule. I drove a 12-year-old Range Rover so she could drive a car no older than 2 years. "Listen, Alex, I have needs and you just can't meet them. So either you suck it up, like I know you will, or you lose me to a younger man." "You mean Henry Walker. Just call him by his name, Holly. Everyone already knows he's sleeping with you," I interrupted. "Okay. Yes, Henry and I are lovers. He's basically your boss, Alex, and one day he'll take over the company from his uncle," she said bluntly. "So he gives me what I need now in bed, and if you don't adjust and accept the device, then I'll go to him and he'll give me everything else I want and need." As usual, I didn't say anything. I just got up from my seat and went to my office. I really wanted to hit something or someone, but instead I collapsed into the chair at my desk and screamed into my hands. Tears began to flow, and I wished I could be anywhere but here right now. I found a tissue and wiped my eyes when the phone rang. I picked up the phone and heard an unfamiliar voice on the other end. It was Rachel. We talked for about an hour, and when I hung up, everything else disappeared from my mind and I had a huge smile on my face. Rachel was thrilled that I decided to look into my father's story, and she had a lot to share. She spoke at 100 miles per hour, and I had a hard time catching everything she was saying. I found out that my mom actually kicked my dad out of the house, so she lied to me my entire childhood. Unfortunately, he died in 1983 when I was only 11 years old. He died of alcohol poisoning, and his mother, my grandmother, always blamed my mother for his character and state of mind after he left us. Rachel said that he always wanted to come back into my life, but he was stopped. We agreed to meet at her home in Cambridge over the weekend. I was excited, and I knew a break would be good for me. The rest of the week passed slowly. At home, everything remained the same, and at work I was constantly ridiculed behind my back. Henry and his friends thought it would be funny to hang underwear on my office door. I looked at Olivia, and she didn't say anything. There was a note inside the underwear that read, "Please return to your wife." I crashed. I cried that day too. I wanted to blame everyone but myself. I was glad when Saturday arrived. I told Holly I was going to meet a friend in London, and she didn't seem to care what I was doing. I assumed that she would cheat on me, so my absence would make things easier for her. The trip to Cambridge was tense. The M25 was a nightmare as usual, and I found Rachel's house an hour later than planned. This didn't seem to bother her, as I was greeted with the best hug I've had in years. I met her husband, Greg, and their 2 young children, Grace and William. After the formal greetings, we moved on to talk about my father and my new family. Rachel had such a warm and selfless personality, and she and Greg interrupted each other while finishing each other's sentences. I think they were both happy to share our family's story. During my visit, we were joined by David and Lucy Price. He was also my cousin and Rachel's brother. We got along well, and he added what he knew about my father and family. After lunch, we took a short drive, during which I was given time to think. When we returned, David and I talked about our work and family life. He could tell things weren't going well for me, and for some reason, I trusted both of my new cousins. They just told me not to put up with it, and that they would support me if I needed anything. I was so grateful. I left Cambridge with a new outlook on things. I was lied to and treated so poorly for so many years that knowing that I had a completely different family who showed me more kindness and honesty in one day than most people I have known my entire life gave me hope. I needed to figure out my life and get back to happiness, not just for myself, but for my girls, my friends, and my new family. When I returned home, it was already after 24, and Holly was just getting ready to go out somewhere. "Where are you going, Holly?" I asked. "With friends." "Do you mean Henry or Max?" I asked sharply. She looked at me, surprised how I knew the name of her second lover. I gave her a knowing look. "Oh, don't start all over again, Alex," she begged, seemingly indifferent to my feelings. "Please, Holly, I'm asking you to stop this and be my wife." "Stop being stupid, Alex. I am your wife and always will be. Don't deny me my pleasures and I will make your life easy. I will be back by midnight." She completely ignored my requests and continued to threaten me. She walked toward me with open arms, so I turned my back to her. She said nothing to my obvious dismissive gesture and simply picked up her Prada purse and headed for the door. "Again, Holly, as your husband, I ask you not to do this." My voice became stern. She stopped and looked at me, as if asking herself who this guy was and who he thought he was talking to by speaking to me in that tone. It only lasted a second before she started laughing again. "What are you going to do, Alex? Leave me? You'll never have the courage to do that. We both know you'll always be here for me." I was dejected. I lowered my head as her words echoed in my head. "No balls for me. Deny me my pleasures." I always knew she was a spoiled brat. Her parents took care of that. I knew I treated her like a queen while I was the workhorse. I knew she was selfish, but I always believed that she loved me more than anything in the world. I knew I was a fool, and I knew I had been one for too long. This needed to end, and I needed to make a plan to do it. I didn't waste any time getting started. I needed to find a way to destroy the last vestiges of affection I had left for her. And I think I found a way. I found the box I was looking for and a specific picture inside that box. This was the only gift from my mother and sisters. I didn't think it would work, but I cut out a photo I had of Holly's face and pasted it next to them. I have no love left for them, and adding Holly's grinning face to the photo might have helped. I placed it on the table next to the monitor in my office. I finished around 12:45. I've pretty much thought through what I'm going to do in the short term. I had an idea of when I would leave, but it could take a few more weeks. I had time because Holly didn't expect me to leave. It might not work, and I would definitely need help to pull it off. But by this time, I had convinced myself that I would see it through. I heard someone stumble through the door, and when I stood up to look out the window, I saw Henry Walker's car drive away. I heard her coming up the stairs, so I quickly erased my history. In the future, I will have to use incognito mode. I waited for her to enter our bedroom before walking down the stairs to make myself some coffee. I sat on the couch and thought about my future away from this place. And honestly, without my daughters, I knew it wouldn't be that bad. I thought I'd try to get closer to them. It's Monday morning, and I came to work with the clear understanding that I wasn't going to lay another finger on it. Even if Jack Walker fires me, I don't care. I walked to my office, not paying attention to the ridicule and comments addressed to me. I was going to get even with these scoundrels, and I knew that my anger would somehow help me get through this. I managed to arrange a meeting with the bank at 13 Roxaux, and until that time, I calculated my finances in preparation. It was a long step, but if everything had worked out and the right people had helped me, I would have come out of this situation almost unscathed. The meeting went as planned, and I was able to close my savings account and remove my name from the joint account. I had an ISA with a few £1,000s in it, so I closed it with cash and stuck it in my wallet. On the way back to the office, I stopped at PC World and purchased 2 digital voice recorders, a 500 GB USB 3.0 external hard drive, and a new PC hard drive. Back at the office, I sat down and began trying to gain access to the company's confidential client files. I had seen them briefly before in Jack's office, so I knew they existed. But I needed his password. It took me an hour to crack it. Ironically, his wife's name was the username, and the password consisted of his name and a 6-digit date of birth, Jack240656. I had everything I needed. I connected the drive to my computer and downloaded all the files onto it. 10 minutes later, I did the same with all my new plans and drawings for the energy-efficient hydraulic pump system I was working on that would keep the company at the forefront. We have produced pumps for air conditioning systems, heavy equipment, and even the dairy industry. I erased all my PC history, including all plans and all my work. Then I turned it off, removed the hard drive, and replaced it with a new one. I put everything in my bag and then reinstalled Windows. I spent the rest of the day researching our competitors on my phone. I went on Monster to look for engineering jobs in South London, Surrey, and then left for the day. That evening, after another silent dinner, I went to my office. I discovered that one of our major competitors, which was struggling during the financial crisis, was looking for a mechanical engineer who could help with basic design and process control. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it was very close. They were offering a salary 10K less than my current salary, so I sent them an email and included my CV. I decided to sleep in our marital bed that night to keep up appearances for Holly. However, I pretended to be asleep when she came in. I felt her press against me, and I felt sick. And as bad as it was, it made me happy. I started to feel disgusted with her, and that helped me in the long run. The next day, I received a call from a very surprised Robert Williams at Sutton Hydraulics. We spoke briefly, and he couldn't believe I was considering leaving Walker Engineering for his smaller company. He offered me a job almost immediately, but I insisted on an interview the next day. He agreed. Another important element was in place, and the wheels began to turn quite quickly. I had a lot of free time, so I started looking for apartments in the area. I didn't need a house, and although the options weren't particularly attractive, I was able to find a really nice apartment to rent. The cost was $1,200 a month for 2 bedrooms, and was perfect for me. The apartment was 15 minutes from my daughter's and 5 minutes from work. I arranged a viewing the day after my interview with Robert Williams. I then spoke to Jack and told him that I needed to go to my daughter's in Kingston the next day to sign some papers. He just waved me off and said to go. That night I called my best friend Toby Brown. We have known each other since school. We both went to Kingston, but he studied finance and mathematics. He was now a major banking analyst in the city and lived with his wife and children in a nice house in Twickenham. Even better, he and his wife hated Holly, which meant we rarely interacted with each other as couples. Holly was jealous of Sarah because she was an aspiring web developer and the wife of a wealthy banker. It seems that even with everything I offered her, I still didn't measure up. I arranged to meet with Toby the following evening after my interview and viewing of the apartment. He knew I had something on my mind, but I told him I would tell him everything when we met. During the trip, I thought about many things. Today was an important day not only for my plan in the short term, but also for my future. I had no idea how the girls would react yet. Before the latest discoveries, I planned to retire at 55. I was thinking about investing in a holiday home in Italy or somewhere else. My mortgage was due when I turned 50, and an extra 5 years of work would have allowed us to build up a nice fund without having to rely on retirement savings. My new job was 20 minutes from the girls' apartment. The meeting was brief, and the apartment was perfect. So I had plenty of time before I needed to meet Toby, so I picked up lunch for me and the girls and headed to their apartment. They lived together, and I paid half the rent. When I approached the building, I didn't know what to tell them. I didn't know how often they talked to their mom, but I knew that I didn't want to hide anything from them. When they saw me, they ran downstairs and hugged me as I walked through the door. My smile could be seen from space. I missed her so much. "Daddy! Daddy!" they shouted, laughing as if they were still babies. They led me inside, and I laid out the lunch I had picked up along the way. We sat and ate while they told me about their lives and studies. I was so proud of my daughters. Sophie had been studying to become a pharmacist for 2 years, and Ava was studying nursing. 2 professions created for loving and caring people. I saw Rachel in them and talked a lot about our new family and promised that we would all meet soon. When we finished lunch, I took a sip of coffee and thought, they knew something was going on. "What happened, Dad? Tell me," Sophie said. "Well, you know your mom is cheating on me, right?" I said. They both looked at each other before returning their gaze to me and nodded in unison. "Well, I've had enough and decided I'll leave her," I blurted out, drawing universal smiles. "Okay," Ava said. "It was time, Dad," Sophie added. "Aren't you mad or something?" I asked cautiously. "No, Dad. As far as I remember, she was always a jerk to you," Sophie snapped. I thought about reproaching her for disrespecting her mother, but decided not to. In fact, I thought, well done, Sophie. I also felt ashamed again because they obviously saw this growing up. I hoped they wouldn't follow their mother's example with men. I hoped that I had not harmed them with my weakness and patheticness. I also hoped that they had respect for me. "What are you going to do, Dad?" Ava asked. I told them about the new job and that I was going to move closer to them. They were delighted, but also surprised that I actually decided to leave their cheating mom and that I already had plans in place when I did. I received 2 big, loving hugs from them for this. I told them I would do everything I could to protect my financial future without going into detail. As I stood up to leave, they told me that they would support me no matter what. And although they loved their mom, she was second only to me. I left their apartment filled with happiness and was now ready for the next step of my plan. This was the most important part. Toby and Sarah met a few years after university. They were 2 of the nicest people I knew, and I relied on their kindness tonight. As usual, I was greeted warmly, but what I was about to ask them worried me. And they both knew I was out of my depth. They wanted to know right away what was going on, so I told them. There's no point in beating around the bush. I told them everything that happened and the first part of my plans. They were more surprised that I took action than Holly's betrayal. For them, it was par for the course. "So, why did you decide to leave her now, Alex?" Sarah asked, handing me another cup of tea. I passed on something stronger since I had to drive home tonight. I always thought she was cheating on me, but I couldn't prove it. Now that she confessed, everything fell into place. I also learned something that made me say enough is enough. I told them about meeting my cousins and the truth about how my father was kicked out of the house and how my sisters sided with my mother. My dad was just like me, or rather I was just like him, but this time my girls are on my side. "So did this discovery motivate you to finally stand up for yourself?" asked Toby. His face showed concern. "No. I was taken to my father's grave. At first I was hesitant, but I was able to put down flowers and say a few words. It was then, looking at the inscription on the stone, that I became dumbfounded. Then I knew I had to leave," I explained. "What was there, Alex?" they asked in unison. "There was a picture of a rose, and under it, it said, 'In loving memory.' There was his date of birth, and under it, it said how many years he lived." There was silence for a moment before I spoke again. "He died at the age of 44, the age I am now." Both Toby and Sarah shuddered involuntarily at the news, and I knew they understood. There were times when I could have resorted to alcohol like he did, or killed myself like my grandmother thought he did. I had a choice. Be like him or fight, I said confidently. I decided that I'm not going to kill myself trying to be a perfect husband and being bullied and ridiculed at the same time. At that moment, I felt weaker than I had in weeks. Admitting to my friends how rock bottom I was harder than I expected. Toby brought me out of this state. What do you need from us, Alex? Please say no if it's too much. But I have a plan to protect myself and... Break off this bitch, Sarah intervened. I smiled and nodded. Sarah did seem to have a tough side. When I suspected she was having an affair in 2008, I opened a separate savings account and put all my bonuses and any spare money there. Also, luckily, the only way I could get a mortgage for the amount I needed was if I applied for my name. Holly had no real work history, so it was easier to apply myself. I knew that if anyone could follow my thought, it would be Toby. My savings with interest are now $6,800. I have $120,000 left on my mortgage, but the house next door has sold for over $500,000. Toby, I need you and your connections to help me get a short-term loan for the other $60,000. I want to pay off the mortgage before the divorce, when I get divorced. Why? That means she can claim half, Sarah said. Well, other than the 60-odd thousand savings I'll keep, she might still be fighting for half of it. But that's where you come into play, I said, pausing for a second. I want you to register a new company. What's it like to register a new company? Toby interrupted. I want to transfer the title of my house to your new company. This means that she will not be able to get to it. I have looked into this, and if I pay off the mortgage, all I need to do is contact the land registry and transfer the title ownership of your company. Toby and Sarah looked at each other for a minute. Will this work, Alex? I mean, if you get divorced, she'll hire a lawyer and fight for everything. She doesn't have the money for it, and I'm sure her parents will be reluctant to shell out such a huge sum if they find out that their daughter is a traitor. Plus, I hope to use her opinion of me to my advantage, I said. How? Asked Toby. She thinks I'm a coward who will never leave her, so I won't ask for a divorce until the house is sold. The property will turn into cash, and by the time she realizes I'm getting a divorce, we can transfer that money to different accounts. Toby just smiled at me and said, I didn't know you were capable of that, Alex. So will you help me? I asked. Oh, yes. I'll get right to it, but you know a good lawyer will try to trace the money, right? He said. Yes. But it will take a long time, and she won't be able to afford the big legal bill. After another hour of conversation, I left for home. All the pieces of the puzzle fit together. On the way home, I decided that I wouldn't even file for divorce. I was sure I wouldn't meet anyone again, let alone get married again, and this way it would buy me more time. I assumed Holly wouldn't worry about my absence for at least a month. I laughed at the thought to myself. By next week, I would have left. It was almost 2 a.m. when I returned home. I looked in on Holly, and she was fast asleep. No remorseful conscience prevented her from sleeping, I thought. I decided to go to the guest room. Thursday morning, I was up and out before Holly even woke up. I spent the morning writing my resignation letter, and around lunchtime, Toby called. I've got good news, bad news, and then more good news, buddy. Okay, go in order, I said, laughing. Well, the good news is that I registered a company. It only takes an hour at company's house, he said. The bad news is that to borrow the amount you need, you'll need a lot of collateral, something like a house, and that's not a good fit for you. I scratched my head in frustration, trying to think of something, when Toby continued, Listen, Alex, you trust me and I trust you. I discussed this with Sarah and we came to the same conclusion. I will now transfer you £60,000 so that you can continue with this. Just give me the money back whenever you can, okay? I was stunned. If he could see my face right now, he would know how grateful I am. This is too much, Toby. You've already done enough. I was interrupted. Just take the money and do what you need to do, he said. You have no idea how much this helps me, buddy. I owe you one. Just do it. Get away from this disrespectful, money-grubbing cheater and be happy. That's all we care about. I gave him my details and ended the conversation. My next call was to the bank to set up an appointment for the next day. After work, or rather lack thereof, I went to the Land Rover dealer. I knew the guy because that's where I bought Holly a Range Rover Sport about 10 months ago. I was still paying for it, in fact. I had an idea on how to get some more money. Hello, Mr. Price. Have you finally decided on a new car for yourself? John Reeves met me at the entrance. He owned a dealership. No, John. I wanted to discuss selling my wife's car and paying off the remaining balance. I said, sounding more pleased than I should have been. "Oh, I hope everything is okay," he asked. "It's okay. You've met her and you know how demanding she is. Now, she wants a Mercedes 4F4. Well, I don't want to say anything bad, but she did seem persistent," he admitted. We agreed that he would return the Range Rover, and we would cancel our payment plan. I promised to come back to upgrade my car, and he knew he could recoup the cost of Holly's car by selling it as good as new. I apologize for any inconvenience, but the thought of selling me an expensive new Range Rover more than made up for it. On the way out, I picked up the 2016 brochure, not for myself, but for Holly. When I got home, Holly was sitting in the living room clutching a cup of coffee and looking a little pale. I took off my jacket and threw my bag on the floor. "Everything is fine, dear?" I asked through clenched teeth. "Yeah, just feeling a little tired, honey," she replied, taking a sip from her mug. She held out her arms as if she wanted me to hug her and make her feel better. I ignored her and went back to my bag, taking out the brochure. "I know what will make you happier," I said. I walked over to her and sat down on the coffee table opposite her. She looked at the empty seat next to her and then at me, with bewilderment. "What do you have there?" she asked, looking at the brochure. "Well, your car is almost a year old, and I went to the dealer today and saw their new model. It's amazing, Hals," I said as her eyes lit up. "I want my wife to have the best of everything, so I'm going to trade in your car and buy you this," I said, pointing to the new 2017 model in the brochure. "Oh, wow, I like it," she said, unaware of my plan. "You always know how to please me, don't you, Alex? The only problem is that they already have a buyer for your car, so I need to get it there by Friday afternoon. I'll finish work early and take it to the dealer, and you can use my car to visit your lovers on the weekend." The last comment made her flinch, and a look of shock and bewilderment appeared on her face. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing, Alex. I just thought you were still mad about our arrangement," she said. "Not our arrangement, Holly. Your arrangement. I had no choice, remember. But I guess I have no choice, right?" I said, hoping to get an answer. She simply nodded, as if she had finally put me in my place, and I accepted defeat. "I love you, Alex." I turned to look at her and was met with a sincere expression of concern. I didn't answer and just went into the kitchen. My phone started ringing and I went out into the backyard to answer it. Toby confirmed that the money had been transferred. I was ready for action. The next day, I wasted no time once I walked into the bank and was ushered into the mortgage specialist's office. She was about my age and didn't wear a wedding ring. I thought that maybe there would be life after Holly after all, but I pushed that thought away. An hour later, the mortgage was paid off. All my remaining accounts were closed. I walked a few doors down and opened a new account at a different bank. I was a happy man, knowing that I wouldn't have to pay anything else unless Holly hired a lawyer ensued. My smile faded. I walked back to the office, ignoring Olivia, who stood up to talk to me. I sat down with my coffee and thought about the next step of my plan. I contacted the land registry and completed the relevant online application. I had all the details about Toby and Sarah's new company, and within 10 minutes of submitting my application, I received an email confirming it would be processed within 3 to 5 days. After that, I will simply transfer the title to Toby, and he can register the property under his company name. I decided to look online for furniture and learn about the procedure for turning off utilities in the house. I had to wait for the right time, but I set up new accounts for my Sutton apartment. Finally, I have one more thing left to do, something I've been putting off. I knocked on Jack's door. Of course Olivia was there with him. Usually on Fridays, this old lecher gave her extra lessons, and I think I interfered with their love affairs. She left us alone. "How can I help you, Alex?" he said cheerfully as he stared at Olivia leaving the room. I placed my resignation letter on his desk. He looked at me with that same stupid grin on his face. "What is this?" he asked. "My resignation," I replied. "I think it's best if I leave immediately. Considering the situation between our families, I doubt you'll want to keep me here for long." He looked dumbfounded. I would appreciate it if you would have my P45 ready by Monday, and please don't mention this to anyone. My wife shouldn't know, I said deliberately harshly. But you can't do that, we need you, he said pathetically. Not as much as you need your nephew, apparently. I'll come back on Monday to get my things. I pretended to drop a pen from my pocket, and as I bent down to pick it up, I pulled the digital voice recorder out of my sock. I attached a pin to it, and when I stood up, I pressed record and pushed it under the seat into the wooden frame of the chair. If that's all, Jack, I have things to do. Okay, Alex, but don't come back when you're broke. Your money is the only thing keeping your cheating wife with you. Do you understand that? Of course I know that, Jack. It's a pity that my wife is not as faithful as yours, I said, smiling. I knew it hit him where it hurt. I turned and walked out of his office. An hour later, I drove home and took Holly's car and registration certificate. I went to the dealer and left her car. Luckily, John Reeves offered to take me home, and I happily accepted. When I got home that night, Holly was sitting at the kitchen table with large red bags under her eyes. I knew she was crying. "What's going on, Hos?" I asked, with apparent sincerity. "We need to talk, Alex," she said, inviting me to sit. For a moment, I thought I had been exposed. I felt a surge of horror. "What's happened?" I asked again. "I went to the doctor today and got a diagnosis." She hesitated. Many thoughts ran through my head. If this was serious, what kind of person would I be, leaving a seriously ill woman as I had planned? I have," she stuttered. "Just tell me, Holly, what is it?" I begged her to speak it out. "I have gonorrhea," she finally said, bursting into tears. I laughed. God, how I laughed. And she just looked at me angrily. "It's not funny, I feel so ashamed." I turned to her, and she looked pathetic. It must have been humiliating. "Well, I know I don't have it because I haven't touched you in over a month, and ever since I found out about your cheating, I've been using protection," I said, trying not to be too obviously proud of it. "Oh, so if you're okay, that means it's normal?" She fell silent. "Just take your meds and you'll soon be back on your feet. Oh, I mean, on your back. If looks could kill, I'd already be dead. Just find out who gave it to you and tell him to go see a doctor before he spreads it further," I said, standing up and leaving her crying at the table. That night, I slept well for the first time in months. Of course, I slept in the guest room. It wasn't worth the risk of having an infected wife. Saturday morning, I felt great. A good night's sleep definitely helped, and I went into our bedroom to wake Holly up and tell her I would give her some space to rest and recover. "I'm going to the girls. I'll tell them he from you. Just rest, okay?" I said, trying to be as nice as I could pretend to be. She smiled at me and asked me to hug her. I gave up, but did it without enthusiasm. When she loosened her hug, she must have sensed that something was wrong with me. She looked at me sadly and said, "You think I'm disgusting, don't you?" I didn't say anything, and suddenly tears rolled down her cheeks. "I just want you to get better, that's all." "Oh, Alex, I love you so much. I think I made a big mistake. I told Allison about my problem and she was horrified. At first I felt sorry for her, but she disappeared so quickly that it even surprised me. I realized that I had lost all love for the woman I had been married to for 21 years. Can she really disappear that quickly? Obviously she could because I was ready and her situation didn't change anything. I left the room without saying anything. He got into the car and drove away happy. Later that morning, I sat with the girls and told them everything that had happened. They were amazed, and I saw that they began to relate to me in a new way. I told them about Holly's little visit to the doctor, which they found funny. I shouldn't have laughed, but I couldn't help it. And it showed me that maybe the girls really hated her as much as I did. "What will she do, Dad?" Ava asked. "She'll have to move in with her grandparents or convince one of her lovers to take her in. I have a feeling those two scoundrels were only interested in sleeping with a married woman and showing off about it. I doubt they'll want to be in a relationship with her. What do you think?" I asked. They both just looked at me and shook their heads. That night, I stayed with Toby and Sarah, who were hosting a dinner with many of their friends and colleagues. Several single women my age were invited, and I felt confident enough to strike up a conversation with them. The alcohol helped me approach a woman named Amy, who was a friend of Sarah's, and as the drinks flowed, she even talked me into dancing. It was a fun evening, and I needed it. A night without thinking about Holly and the end of my marriage or my plans to leave her felt like a relief. When I arrived home late Sunday morning, I found Holly doing household chores. I walked into the living room, and when she saw me, she rushed towards me and hugged me. I just patted her on the back. "Where did you stay last night, Alex?" "I thought you were coming home?" she asked. "Toby and Sarah had a dinner party and I had too much to drink, so I ended up sleeping on their couch," I deadpanned. "That's not like you. Did you have fun?" she asked carefully, looking at me. I had to be careful not to give anything away, so I took out my phone and showed her some photos. Her face quickly turned red. "Who is this woman?" she asked angrily. "Oh, it's Amy. She's Sarah's friend. She actually made me dance. It was fun." I looked at Holly, who was looking at me angrily. The irony of the situation was incomprehensible to her. She was angry at me for dancing innocently when she was sleeping with someone every week. "Next time I want to go with you. I haven't seen the guys in a long time," she said, returning to her normal color. I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on. Holly followed me. "Are you getting by without a car?" I tried to fill the silence with small talk. "Fine. When will my new car arrive?" she asked. "They said it would be delivered on Wednesday." I turned around to see that she looked somewhat worried. "But if you want, you can come on Monday afternoon and pick her up." "I have errands, hair, and shopping with my sister on Monday," she replied, apparently not too concerned about not having a car. "Well, I can drive you into town to see my sister, and then you can have her take you to the dealer. Then you can drive back in your new Range Rover," I said with an excited smile. She smiled and walked towards me with open arms. I turned to the teapot, pretending not to notice her. Throughout the day, Holly hovered around me, and I really felt uncomfortable. She constantly tried to kiss me or hug me, and I constantly made excuses to leave. I think she got the hint because when I went to bed, I saw her crying again. "Good night, Holly." "Will you sleep with me tonight, Alex? I want to cuddle with you and have you tell me everything will be okay." I didn't feel anything. "Not until you get the doctor's clearance, Holly." "Sorry, but it's your choice," I said harshly. "When I get better, I'm sure I'll find a man who wants to be with me in bed." "I have a lot of lost time," she answered bitterly. I laughed to myself. It took longer than I expected, but here it is, and the witch is back. All the regrets from Friday night were gone. For the last 21 years, I would have believed her bullshit, but this time I ignored her tears and headed to the guest room. Last night in my house, she will be in the guest room. I was also glad she said those things. It cleared up any doubts I might have had. I looked at my fake photo of her and my sisters, and all I could feel was hatred for her. She was only sweet when she needed something and a bitch when she couldn't get it. I woke up early on Monday morning. Holly also woke up early for her 8:30 hair appointment, so I took her into town as planned. "Don't forget to take a taxi to the car dealership around 2 p.m. They are waiting for you," I said, ignoring her attempts to kiss me. I left knowing that this could be the last time I saw her. I was somehow afraid that this would not be the case, but I would do everything possible to make sure that it was so. Along the way, I called the mobile company and canceled both of our contracts. I stopped on the side of the road to pay the fine with my card. I was informed that the phones would be open until 5 p.m. Great. Next, I headed to the office to get my P45 certificate. I walked into the factory, and there was a heavy atmosphere. The news of my departure must have spread, and for a moment, I saw fear on their faces. I didn't know why. As I walked past the coffee machine where the usual suspects were gathered, I wasn't sure if Max and Henry knew they had both slept with my wife or not. But here they were both smiling at me and sharing jokes with other idiots. "Good morning, guys," I said cheerfully. "Good morning, Alex. How's your wife?" they said in response to the usual laughter. How it was still funny was beyond me. "Oh, not very well, I'm afraid," I replied. "One of you clowns gave her gonorrhea." I walked away in complete silence. and turned around to see their jaws drop and Max then shoot something at Henry. I heard a big noise before I went up the stairs. Olivia saw me approach and half smiled before lowering her head. Maybe now I've finally earned some respect. Jack was at the door before I knocked. I have what you need, so take it and get out. Maybe this respect was in my imagination. I walked into his office and sat down. He quietly put the recorder in his pocket. I knew he'd given Olivia her weekly dose on Friday, and now I had it all on the recorder. "So do you have another job in mind, Alex?" he asked sharply. I ignored him at first, but I thought I'd give him what he wanted. "No, nothing," I said. He had a big smile on his face, and he probably thought I would come crawling back to him soon. "So I'll get my last month's salary and annual bonus now, Jack?" I asked. He laughed when Olivia came in with my P45 certificate. "What's so funny?" she asked. "Alex here just asked for his bonus and salary." "That's funny," Olivia said, joining in with him laughing at me. I thought, why not, and laughed too. This made them stop and look at me as if I had gone crazy. "Why are you laughing, Alex?" said Olivia. "I don't know, Olivia. Why do you let this old man have sex with you every week?" I said as my laughter got louder. They froze as her eyes widened, and Jack began to blush with anger. "I think Mom and Dad are proud of their slutty daughter." She dropped my documents on the floor and ran out of the room in tears. "Get out of my office and out of my company before I make the guys drag you out of here by your ears." I laughed as I left his office and collected the last of my things. I was still laughing to myself as I pulled up to my house. I got out and lowered the back seats. Opening the trunk, I went into the house. I walked around the house, thinking about what I wanted to take with me. I had some pieces of Romero Brito art, so I took them off the walls and wrapped them in plastic I found in the garage. I packed them in the car and continued walking around the house, collecting things. Finally, I went upstairs and emptied my wardrobe. I took all my documents from the safe, including my daughter's birth certificates and marriage certificate. I found the stairs to the attic and went up there and found all my old things. My diploma and family photos were all there. I went into the bedroom and took all the jewelry I had given Holly over the years. It was worth over $10,000, and then I took all the bags, shoes, and expensive coats I had bought too. In fact, the entire wardrobe was bought by me, so I took everything. I've always been responsible, so I had receipts for almost everything for insurance purposes, which will come in handy when I sell it all. When I finished packing, I knew I needed a TV, so I grabbed that too, along with my movie collection and, of course, the Blu-ray player. By this point, my car was too full. I thought I would get rid of all of Holly's things and a few other items that I didn't really need, including some of my old clothes. The new me will need a new wardrobe, and the girls will be happy to help me with this. I found the best photos of me and the girls and packed them in the car. I wasn't in much of a rush because Holly wasn't due back until 2 p.m. I made a cup of tea and rested for 5 minutes. Well, I need to drink a cup of tea. I think it's in Magna Harta, if I'm not mistaken. I picked up the phone and called the TV company and canceled satellite TV, phone, and internet. I called British Gas and Southern Water to cancel the utilities. It would take a few days, but I didn't care. I went back to the bedroom and sat on the bed when I noticed something that gave me an idea that even scared me. It was sitting at the top of the closet in a dusty old box. It was Holly's wedding dress. She loved him, perhaps even more than me. I took it down and then found our wedding album among the box of photographs on the bed. I grabbed the blanket, gathered everything together, and headed into the garden. When I got outside, I walked to the middle of the garden and dumped everything into a pile. I added all of Holly's things and her personal items that I knew I couldn't sell. I made sure I left her underwear alone because, well, I didn't want to catch anything. I walked up to the car and closed all the doors. I was ready to leave, and looking at my watch, it was only 1:45 p.m., so I called Robert Williams and told him I could bring him my P45 certificate later that evening during the night shift. This way I could start work again in the morning. He sounded excited, and I hoped I made his day by ending the call. Now it was 14 n, and I sat waiting for the call. I found paint thinner in the garage and went out into the garden to pour it on the wedding dress. I was about to set it on fire when my phone rang. Hello? I said calmly. What's going on, Alex? Holly screamed into the phone. What do you mean, Holly? I asked ironically. Don't play dumb, Alex, she continued. Calm down, Holly. What happened? There was silence, and I could hear her breathing heavily. I could also hear as if her sister was in the background. They told me that you didn't buy me a new car, but sold mine. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, I said. What are you talking about, Alex? What's going on? She started to panic. Now, if you want a car, you can buy it yourself, I said, trying to remain calm as best I could. My heart was pounding. What? She screamed. I don't understand, Alex, she said timidly and sounded very confused. You heard me perfectly, Holly. If you want a car, buy it yourself. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to clean the kitchen. Is this some kind of sick joke? I said nothing. We'll talk about this when I get home, Alex. I'm not happy that I'm playing, she shouted. Again, I was silent. I heard her gasping as if she were walking quickly towards her sister's car. The slamming door confirmed this. I knew she was on her way. In her condition, she could persuade her sister to drive here in 5 minutes. Alex, Alex, Alex. Yes, I answered almost too calmly. You said you're in our kitchen? She suddenly realized what I said. Yes. Why are you not at work? She asked. I was silent. Alex, Alex, Alex. She was gasping for breath now, and I could hear the panic and confusion in her voice. I hung up while she continued screaming my name. I went outside, lit a match, and started the fire. Our past burst into flames when I left. I took our marriage license out of my pocket, tore it into pieces, and left it on the kitchen table, along with one photo of us all together on vacation at Disneyland. It was a wonderful time with many happy memories. I wonder if she thought the same. I got into the car and drove away. When I got to the end of the street, I saw in the rearview mirror Holly and Jennifer pull up to the house. Neither of them raised their heads. They simply ran into the house. I turned off the phone, smiled, and drove on. The A3 was practically empty as I drove towards my new home. For some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling of anxiety that clung to me. I knew this wouldn't be the last time I'd see Holly, and once my plan moved forward, she'd do everything she could to find me and make me pay. That's the kind of person she is. I also knew she would drag the girls into this, and I didn't want them to be burdened with our problems, especially since they needed to focus on their studies. I was in Sutton by 4 p.m. and decided I had time to pop into the local mobile phone store and sign up for a new mobile contract. I also managed to contact the admin team at work to process my P45 certificate and met my new secretary, Freya. She was quite young, but she was very professional, unlike Olivia. I returned to my new apartment, which was completely empty. I had water and electricity, so I found a kettle that I had brought from home and made a cup of tea. I moved my things and ordered pizza. I turned on my old phone, and the service was stopped. I smiled to myself, knowing that now Holly didn't have a phone either, which should give the girls some time before I could talk to them. I laid out my sleeping bag in the living room and waited for dinner. I had furniture that was due to arrive over the weekend, but for now I was glad to be away from Holly. I turned on my laptop and found the voice recordings I made in Jack Walker's office. I downloaded the content and played it to hear damning evidence of his infidelity with Olivia. I took 2 flash drives and made a couple of copies. I wrote the addresses of Margaret Walker, Jack's wife, and Peter Lewis, Olivia's boyfriend, and then put a flash drive in each envelope. I'll deliver them to the post office tomorrow before work. Finally, I decided to call my daughter Sophie to tell her the latest news and ask her not to tell her mother where I was. To my surprise, she admitted that she had not yet spoken to her mother. Well, of course, she didn't have a phone to do it with. I furnished my apartment the following week and wasted no time at work, approaching Walker Engineering clients and convincing them to switch to Sutton. They saw what we were offering and quickly came over to our side. A couple decided to stay with Jack, but most hated him, but tolerated him because of the excellent products we offered. I knew it wouldn't take long for Jack to find out why his business was losing customers, but I didn't care. I also knew that with all the utilities shut off at my old house, Holly would understand that I wasn't coming back. There was no way she would be able to pay the bills. so I knew it was safe for Toby to begin the selling process. Sarah was excited to start the process, and by the end of the week the signs were up. It was during this time that Ava contacted me. It looks like Holly moved in with her parents, and they weren't happy with how their little princess ended up a traitor. Holly, of course, wanted my blood and was furious at what I did to her. Strangely, it gave me great satisfaction, although I knew that it wouldn't end there. Over the weekend, I was invited to another dinner at Toby and Sarah's house. I was told Amy would be there, and she was asking Sarah about me. I found out that she was divorced several years ago and had been alone since her husband left her a year before the divorce. She appears to have come out of the divorce well, receiving a house and full custody of the children, as well as financial support. Unfortunately, she has been skeptical of men ever since. Sarah told her my whole story, and ever since then she wanted to meet me. That's why they organized the previous dinner. She was 2 years younger than me and had 2 teenage children. I felt like I was being accommodated, but decided it couldn't hurt. Dinner went off without a hitch, and I felt completely relaxed for the first time since I'd planned to leave Holly. Amy understood what I was going through and didn't push me or make it obvious that she liked me. We got drunk, danced together, and at the end of the evening we exchanged numbers. She told me to call if I needed someone to talk to, and I thanked her. I slept in Toby's guest room, but these hangovers were becoming increasingly difficult to bear, and coffee was no longer helping. On Sunday morning, good news arrived. After just a week on the market, I received 2 serious offers. I immediately accepted one of them for $550,000. I knew it might take some time before the deal was finalized, but I arranged the money as soon as it was finalized. I opened ISA accounts in the girls' names and then asked Toby to split the rest between several investment funds. I also paid him back and took a large amount of cash to keep in my home safe. I still felt the need to defend myself. The following week, I was pleased to learn from Toby that the sale could go through very quickly. I contacted a moving company and had them move things out of my old house. The girls called their mother and asked if she wanted anything, and now she was even more angry and threatening. I promised the girls that it would all be over soon. On Tuesday morning, I spoke with one of our new clients who was in a meeting with Jack Walker about a possible supply contract extension. He told Jack that he would be moving to Sutton Engineering, and Jack was not surprised. He also told me that Walker Engineering had to lay off 50% of its staff due to job losses. He also informed me that Mrs. Walker was filing for divorce from Jack due to his infidelity. I was absolutely not sympathetic, because in my head, I was already adding up the commission checks during the conversation. I didn't know what happened to Olivia and her boyfriend, but I knew that if Mrs. Walker got her package, he probably did too. And even if he did not receive it, it was probably already known why Mrs. Walker was divorcing her husband. I wonder what her friends and family think about her involvement with the old man. As reward for all the new work, I was given a brand new Land Rover Discovery HSE. I was already thinking about treating myself, but Robert and management were so happy with me and the direction the company was going that they gave me a car and quite a few thousand in commission. In fact, it was more than £30,000. I was looking out my office window, admiring my brand new car, when a familiar Ford Focus pulled into the parking lot. I froze, realizing whose car it was. It was Diana's car, Holly's mom. I sat in my chair and waited for the inevitable call. The bitch finally found me. The phone in my office rang and I picked it up. "Mr. Price, there's a woman at the front desk, claiming to be your wife," said Freya, my secretary. "Tell her I'm in a meeting and will be down in an hour." 3 hours later, I looked out the window and she was still sitting there. I took a deep breath and decided to leave for the night. If she saw me, I'd have to deal with it. If not, I'd just drive by. I walked out the side door and headed to my car. I was just about to get into the car when I heard the brakes squeal, and before I knew what was happening, she pulled up behind me and blocked my exit. She jumped out of the car and stormily approached me with a face full of anger. She looked terrible. Her clothes were clearly her sister's old clothes, and it seemed that she hadn't combed her hair for weeks. "I hate you. I hate you," she screamed, trying to hit me but missing. Yeah, I hate you too, Holly. So say what you need and get out of my life, I said, trying to stay calm. She just looked at me with tears running down her cheeks. You ruined my life, you bastard, she said, sobbing pitifully. I was silent. I just kept listening. You destroyed all my things, my wedding dress and my clothes. Everything was just about her, and why am I not surprised? Then you canceled everything, forcing me to move in with Mom and Dad, she continued. She just looked at me, waiting for me to say, Is that all, Holly? I asked. You are nothing. What do you want to say in your own defense? She screamed. I thought for a second before inviting her into the car. She was stunned, but I didn't want to be a public spectacle anymore. When we sat down, I saw how bad she looked. She looked like she was getting older, and I thought all that plus the STD was affecting her appearance. Please come home, Alex. Let's forget about all this. I will forgive you. What did she just say? Are my ears deceiving me? Do you forgive me? I asked, hoping that I had misunderstood. Yes, Alex, I will forgive you for destroying my things and my life. Are you out of your mind, Holly? I asked. She just looked at me like I was crazy. You openly cheat on me and disrespect me when I gave you everything, and you have the nerve to say you forgive me. But I thought, no, Holly, you're only thinking about yourself. I'll never be with you again, so go away and be with one of your lovers, I said coldly. She shifted nervously in her chair, and I knew. I guess once you suddenly became single, they decided they didn't need you anymore, I asked. They accused me of having an STD and said I was just entertainment. They said they would never want me as a girlfriend because they are traitors. For a moment even I thought it was harsh, but she chose her own path. Well, that was obvious, Holly. Go find someone else. My friends treat me differently now after our separation, and their husbands have started to question their fidelity, which means I have been rejected. I may be a bad influence if you can believe it. The word partition stuck in my head. I knew that meant I was still involved with her, and that made me sad. My parents are outraged, and people in town found out about my STD, no doubt thanks to my so-called friends and lovers. And now some of the factory employees have lost their jobs, and I'm to blame for that too. The truth is that she is partially responsible for all the bad things that happened to her, but I felt sympathy for her. She was wrong, and she was paying a price for it, but what was that price? She had a wonderful life and ruined it because of greed and disrespect. However, I knew I needed to move on. I have nothing left, Alex. I need you, and I want you back in my life. I have no money and no job. When will I get my share of the sale of the house? Here it is. You never told me you loved me. You just need me, Holly, but I don't need you. As for the house, I fell behind on my mortgage and lost it. I lied. Her eyes widened, and her mouth opened in surprise. She was shocked by my words, but at least I knew what this visit was for. I want a divorce, I said. No, please, Alex, of course I love you. Over 20 years together, and I made a little mistake, and you're doing this to me. A very big, unforgivable mistake, Holly, and I will never go back to you. Please, Alex, she screamed, her screams echoing throughout the car. I want a clean break, and if you agree, I'll give you $30,000 in cash, I offered. I saw her face change, and a new decision replaced the tears. No, she screamed. I will fight you in court for every last thing. There is no chance that you have lost your home. You are too smart for that. Crap. She was right, and now I was at a disadvantage. Okay, Holly, I'll put it this way, I began. You'll never get a penny from me. She turned her hips and came face to face with me. I will fight for everything and more, Alex. You have no money, Holly, and I'll move my assets around so much that you'll spend a fortune trying to track the money. I'm smart, remember? So by the time your lawyer finds it, you'll have accumulated a bill that will absorb any benefit. I suggest you take the money I offer, or I will hide it too. Your choice, I said sternly, without taking my eyes off hers. You are cruel. I loved you and gave you children, and this is how you treat me? she said angrily. Thanks to me, our girls will succeed. They will not be liars or cheaters. They will be selfless, not selfish like their mother. So take the money and get out of my life. My anger started to show, and she looked at me, as if I was a stranger. Okay, she blurted out. I'll take the money and agree to a divorce. Okay, I'll arrange everything. With that, she got out of my car and slammed the door. A few seconds later, she sped out of the parking lot. The next day, I filed for divorce on the grounds of her infidelity, and a week later, I agreed to meet Holly at the girl's apartment. The sale of my home was finalized, but I put off investing until the paperwork was signed. We tried to act civilized in front of the girls, but it was difficult. I handed Holly the cash, and she signed the paperwork. I kissed the girls goodbye and wished Holly luck. As I was about to leave, she burst into tears again, but it seemed to me that it was for the sake of the girls. Sophie and Ava looked at me and raised their eyebrows. They knew. See you next weekend, Dad, Ava said as I walked to the door. I walked back into the room as Holly continued to sob, and no one was paying attention to her. I suddenly realized what Ava was talking about. Oh yeah, the Coldplay concert. Everyone is looking forward to it. Shall we meet you in London or go together? Asked Sophie. I'll talk to Amy and let you know in the week, I finally said before leaving. As I walked out the door, I heard Holly shout something, but I decided to ignore it and walked away. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.